Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the update with North Main Financial Group. I'm Joshua Dobi. Appreciate so much your willingness to embrace this medium. We thought we would switch it up a little bit in terms of our monthly communication with you. Certainly, we're going to continue to do the newsletter, especially during this time of COVID-19, to keep you updated on things that are happening and progressing, we hope, in a number of positive ways. But thought we would change up the format a little bit and do a little bit more video this time around for those of you who may like to embrace this kind of medium. So thank you so much for your time, and because I am respectful of it, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. Several things we want to keep kind of on your radar screen in terms of not just the overall economy, but then specifically markets, and then much more specifically what we're looking at considering for the balance of 2021 as far as metrics that we think are important and possible additional congressional legislation that's sitting out there. Certainly it seems that the new president's office wants that for that to be the case. We're going to be watching that very closely. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in this video. So let's go ahead and dive right in. In terms of the metrics for which we are watching from a public health standpoint about where COVID-19 is in terms of new infections, hospitalizations, and daily deaths. We are seeing a positive, meaning a regressing trend line. That has been true now for several weeks, and those folks that we watch most closely, especially the CDC and the folks at Johns Hopkins University and the Department of Public Health, we're watching that very closely, and those tend to be positive things. We're by no means medical experts or experts in public health, but in watching those metrics, then we're making those extrapolations or then looking towards those folks who have placed restrictions on so many aspects of our economic system at this point, and looking towards ways in which they might be ready to loosen those so that we may, quote, get back to normal a little bit. Obviously, there are much more important public health and personal and collective situations that we need to keep in mind, so we're not disregarding those, but insofar as the context of our expertise is concerned, we're wanting to make sure that we're paying attention to those things so that we may be anticipatory for what comes next. So again, those metric items look to be moving in a very positive direction, and we're very thankful for that. Along with that, though, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, is this idea of the next round of COVID-19 related financial relief making its way through Congress. Now, there were several iterations, most especially at the front end of 2020, as we had the initial shutdowns due to COVID-19. We had what was called the CARES Act, still is called the CARES Act, which was passed, which provided a whole host of financial relief items for those most severely impacted by COVID-19. We had a couple other iterations of relief that also made their way through the system last year, including a significant amount that made its way through Congress and through the president's desk in the last week of 2020, and that provided the next round of P3 or payroll protection loan possibilities for those who qualified, and also an extension of unemployment benefits. Number of other items there as well. We're not going to get in the weeds too far on that right now, but another round of that, and especially important for those folks who own small businesses, the amount of small business relief which was part of that second round, and then also if you were among those who were affected by unemployment, an extension in extra benefits through March of this year, 2021. Now there's another round that the current new president's office has put forth to Congress for their consideration that is just under $2 trillion, so much larger than anything that was considered in 2020. A number of things that could be a part of that. We're not going to extrapolate on that right now. Frankly, it's going through the horse trading process in Congress right now, so really hard to know at this point what actually is going to make its way through for approval and eventually to the president's desk for his signature. So we're not going to extrapolate too much on the details at this point. Just want to make you aware that that's sitting out there, and that there are a number of things associated with it. There are discussions on direct payments to folks who qualify from an income standpoint. There are discussions about additional relief to small businesses through the Small Business Administration, and then also other forms of relief to small businesses. Also talk about relief elements to public schools, to health organizations. Again, a number of different parts that are being discussed at this point. Because nothing's through yet, and it's still the back and forth relative to how Congress works, we're not going to extrapolate any more than that. just be paying attention to that. And certainly as that eventually becomes law, we're going to bring that to you in all the best ways so that you might have those details, especially those details which may apply to you, to family members, to loved ones, or to colleagues. All right, well, let's talk about markets here. It has been surprising for us to see the resiliency of the market as measured by the most popular indexes through the balance of last year and into the beginning of 2021. We obviously had some very severe negative performance in the first quarter, towards the end of the first quarter of 2020 into the first part of Q2 in 2020. But we had some very significant snapback from that standpoint, again, as measured by the most popular indexes. And to the extent that a lot of those indexes, again, the most popular ones, Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500 Index, NASDAQ Composite, a lot of those indexes showed some very positive numbers for 2020. I'll raise my hand and say I was very surprised by that. Most often when we have a pullback, like what we had there in the first part of 2020, it takes between 12 and 22 to 24 months in order for the market to recover from that. We did it in under 5 months last year. So very surprising to see that. That speaks to a number of different things, some of them positive, some of them maybe just reactionary, but it certainly speaks to, at least in part, the fact that we had a very strong economy percolating along before we had the shutdowns due to COVID-19 in Q1 of last year. We even see that and have seen that through the balance of 2020 now into 2021 in terms of some of the data and the resiliency from a technical standpoint that we're seeing for us economically here in the US. So very encouraging in that regard, and probably is playing in part into some of that market performance in a positive way that we have seen not only through 2020 but here to start 2021. Now, in saying all of that, we're due for a technical correction. We've had two very, very positive years, again, as measured by the most popular market indexes. We've had two very positive years back to back and a very healthy start to 2021. There's usually a reversion to the mean at some point, meaning as much as I would love for us to be in the double digits forever, every year in the market, that simply isn't reality. So we're anticipating that there's going to be some kind of reversion to the mean at some point. What's going to be the impetus for that? Obviously, we have no idea. We thought we were going to get a little bit of it here a couple of weeks ago when we had some of this mania with regards to GameStop and AMC Entertainment and silver and now cannabis stocks, which many of which have been caught in what's called a short squeeze, meaning that a number of institutional investors had bet that the prices were going to go down. A number of folks on this side of the ledger wanted very much for the prices to go up, and they did. And so the folks who were on the short end of the ledger had to cover off on their bets, which just escalated those prices even faster. So you may have been a part of that. You may not have been following it at all. But for those of us who watch those kinds of things closely, it certainly was a very interesting phenomenon to watch and to see how much variability, both positive and negative in a given day, some of these smaller companies and usually not as actively traded stocks were moving in great big leaps and bounds, again, both positive and negative in a given day. A lot of that is washed through the system at this point, but there's still some of that percolating around right now. So I don't think that's going to have a significant long-term effect on the trading aspects of the market, but certainly something interesting to keep in mind. And if you're one of those who trades actively on Robinhood or some other online trading applications, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is very interesting and very much a phenomenon, but I don't think it's going to be unnaturally disruptive to the markets in terms of its normal day-to-day course on a long-term basis. So just want to bring that to your attention as well, because it was hitting the front page of my Wall Street Journal for a number of days. So I thought it was appropriate to mention here. All right, so we've talked about where we are relative to the public health and macroeconomic aspects of COVID-19 at this point. We've talked a little bit about market performance in 2020 and coming into 2021. What do we see now going forward? Well, it's always very, very challenging to be able to extrapolate in meaningful ways what we see. I'm going to reiterate some of the things that I just mentioned, only because they are foundational and because they are part of the metrics that we watch very closely here at North Main Financial Group. First has to do with the underlying economy. And as I said, that with the number of metrics that we watch, some very positive things there. I don't want to get too far into the minutia or too far into the proverbial weeds in talking about them here, but in terms of our recovery on an unemployment standpoint, in terms of the ways in which significant segments of our markets and significant companies specifically have done very, very well during this time. Now, we obviously have the other end of the markets if we're talking about transportation, airlines, if we're talking about sports and entertainment, hotels and hospitality, which have just been decimated and still have a long ways to go for recovery. But there are other parts of the market which have done very, very well and continue to do well. Certainly those things that have to do with work from home or stay at home kinds of economy sort of things, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Netflix, all of those kinds of things. Again, a lot of them in the big technology end of things, which have done and continue to do very, very well. Doesn't mean that they're going to continue to do well in perpetuity, and it also doesn't mean that the industries that I talked about in terms of transportation, sports and entertainment, hotels, and hospitality are destined to be there forever. It's just a tale of two markets right now. It's a very binary kind of experience where you have some doing very well over here and some not doing very well over here. But what has also happened as a result of that is that these very large companies over on this side of things have masked, in my opinion, some very challenging performance of a very large number of companies on the other end of the spectrum. And so we've seen from an index standpoint, well, we think things are doing very well. Well, maybe. Except if you understand how market indexes are put together, it's easy for some very expensive, very large companies to mask how some smaller companies with smaller share prices are performing. And that's what we see has happened, at least in part in 2021 in the first part of, in 2020 in this first part of 2021. So does that mean that we see things as being negative or that there is this big crash imminent? No, we don't see that. But what we do see, like we said a few moments ago, is that there's a possibility for a technical reversion to the mean. So don't be surprised if we get a pullback index-wise for any number of reasons here over the next several weeks to a couple of months. That being said, our expectations for 2021 are relatively modest, as they always are. As you've heard me say any number of times, I like to plan to hit singles. I'm not your home run guy. So I'm looking to hit singles every day, and certainly from a planning standpoint, we want to keep our expectations modest, and so that if it works here at a modest level, everything above that obviously is gravy, and then is a very pleasant kind of discussion and planning meeting to have. Well, thank you so much, folks, for your time here. Like I said, I always like to be respectful of your time. That concludes my thoughts as far as where we've seen things and what we see going forward here in some general kinds of ways. But always, always, always feel free to reach out to me, to all of our team here at North Main Financial Group with your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. If you're seeing something that looks confusing or concerning out there and you just like to chat about it with somebody, we're always here and we always enjoy hearing from you. Well, friends, again, thank you so much for your time. And until the next time, I'll look forward to talking with you soon.